And from Apulia, DD India's Amritpal Singh is joining us live on this broadcast. Amrit, it's good morning to you over there. Immediate focus, the bilaterals that you mentioned in your report, also particularly with President Zelensky, where Ukraine conflict, in fact, the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine have taken the center stage. India's position on that and much more, and what all Prime Minister is going to talk about in the outreach session, Amrit.
In about 10 minutes from now, Sakal, Prime Minister will begin his first bilateral. It's morning time here. The Prime Minister will meet the French President for about 20 minutes. After that, he meets with the British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. He also has another bilateral before he goes in for the outreach session, to address the outreach session, which by Indian Standard Time would begin at about 5:30 in the evening. He has bilaterals after the outreach session with Giorgia Meloni, the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, with other G7 leaders. There are total of and partner leaders. There are about a total of with the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida as well. So there are about a total of 7 bilateral meetings that he will hold apart from addressing the outreach session. As you rightly said, in the outreach session, he would raise the concerns that India has, especially, he would like to stress upon the concerns, needs, aspirations of the global south, because the partner countries are primarily from the global south. India representing Asia, Brazil from the South American continent. There are countries from the African continent who have been invited by Giorgia Meloni, and also from the Arab League. So, those countries are there. So the Prime Minister would essentially tell the developed world, which is represented by the G7, it is actually their summit. India and others are just partner countries or invitee countries who participate in the outreach session, would say that would convey to the G7 leadership that when you do your deliberations, when you decide on things, do factor in or the concerns of the rest of the world, of the developing world, of the global south, because that's where most of the world's population lives. Say, if you decide on what the future course of action on Ukraine, Russia should be, as you just mentioned, a $50 billion deal on providing more assistance to Ukraine from the frozen Russian assets, that directly impacts global supply chains. And the worst impact is, and the brunt is borne by those living in the global south, because their economies are weak. It has led to hunger in many parts of the world when the conflict started, because Ukraine and Russia being the food baskets of the world, it led to an energy crisis. Many economies went into a crisis because those who have strong, deep pockets can still, bear the brunt. But those with who are weaker economies have to bear the brunt the most. So, that would be the Prime Minister's thrust during his outreach session address to both the G7 countries and the partner countries.
Yes, and there are many firsts, Amrit, you would agree, attached to this edition of G7. 12 partner nations or invitees. You have Africa, you have Arab representation, and then you have the Indian Prime Minister addressing the global outreach session today. The eyes are set upon that. So, from that sense of term, what are the expectations? And if you could just underline the significance of India leading the center stage there in the outreach session, Global South, and other G7 expectations from India.
India is not the center stage here. India is just one of the participants in the outreach session. There are 11 others. But I'll tell you what India is. India has come to represent the voice of the global south. India has emerged as an undeclared leader of the global south, championing their causes. Because of its growing stature, because of its political heft, the world sits up and listens to India when India speaks. There are other countries, there are important countries. Brazil is an important country, but so there are, without drawing any comparisons, India has, because of its economic growth, because of its the role it has come to play in various theaters like the Indo-Pacific, the way it engages with the world. The world sits up and takes note of what India
yes.
says, and India champions very, very seriously. So in that sense, India is in a very good position to champion the cause of the global south. So that is what the Prime Minister would want to use this opportunity for. As he said, post arriving here early this morning, in the wee hours of this morning, that that he would want to engage with the world leaders to find meaningful solutions to the challenges being faced currently by the world. So that is what India's role at this summit is.
Right.
Sakal?
Yes. The international capital, when India talks, the world listens. That's precisely what I wanted to ask you, Amrit. But please stay standby. Please be with us. We are going to come to you just in a bit. But we have some stories also to roll out for our viewers on this broadcast. The Group of Seven Summit started its concluding day of the talks on Friday with migration, with China and artificial intelligence.